Hey, y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is my college football summer school series on Cover 3. I bring on the team experts from the 24/7 sports staff and ask them the questions I care about. No fluff. Which players will be toughest to replace? What position groups are sneakily better or worse than I realize? We get you the scoop on each team in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hey, guys, Bud Elliott here. Welcome back into my college football summer school series on the Cover 3 podcast. Today, I'm talking Louisville. There's a lot of stuff going on. Jody Demling of Cardinal Authority joins us. Jody, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a lot going on, a lot different since the last time we talked about the Louisville program.
Yes, indeed. So a decent year last year, but not quite what Louisville fans would have hoped for, and not a lot of momentum necessarily for the program at the time. They make a change. They go out and they get Jeff Brohm of Purdue. The native son comes home. The vibes there have to be just off the charts right now.
Yeah, and like you said, it wasn't a terrible year. It was a bad start last year. The defense played terrible early in the year, but then they rebounded, and everybody just kind of – there were always the people that wanted Jeff Brohm. From the moment he turned them down 4 years ago, and then they went and hired Scott Satterfield, there were people that still wanted him and always would have wanted him. Now, I think a good fraction of the people, once Louisville kind of, okay, they're going to go to a bowl game. They've got this really good recruiting class. The NIL is kind of helping them out. Scott Satterfield's done a good job with that. I think some people just assumed, okay, it's Scott Satterfield's job for another couple of years. And then all of a sudden on December 5th, it was just like you wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and Scott Satterfield's taking the Cincinnati job. And the moment that news broke, there was no doubt in my mind, and I think in most people's mind, that it was going to be Jeff Brohm. That was the way that it was going to happen. Okay. And it did. It created a lot of energy, created a lot of excitement. Ticket sales, boom, went right up through the roof without even knowing who he's going to have really on the roster because, nowadays you just never know that. And I think that the excitement has continued through the offseason because of the schedule that they have in front of them next year and because of what Coach Brohm and his staff did not only early in the recruiting cycle to kind of come through and keep most of that really good recruiting class together, but also late in the recruiting cycle to where they continue to add player after player after player in the transfer portal.
Jeff Brohm is known for offense. This was a top 35-ish offense last year if you adjust for opponent, which is, okay, kind of a top half of the Power 5, but not something that's necessarily special. They do lose Malik Cunningham, who was a pretty dynamic quarterback. I thought Hudson was a really underrated receiver nationally, and they went to him a whole lot. But they bring in Jack Plummer from Cal at quarterback, and they bring in 5 transfer receivers. I guess we'll start here, Jody. Can you sort out what this passing game is going to look like? Does it actually have a chance to be better? Who are these receivers do we need to know? And is Plummer the guy?
Yeah, Plummer's definitely the guy. He started a ton of games for Jeff Brohm and Brian Brohm, who is going to be the offensive coordinator, his brother. He started a ton of games for them at Purdue. And a lot of people thought, oh, he left Purdue and went somewhere else. It was kind of a mutual thing. Aiden O'Connell was going to be that guy. He was going to have that job, and Jack Plummer wanted to have a job. So they actually helped him get that job at Cal, or helped him get a spot on the Cal roster and do the transfer kind of thing. So when Jeff got this job here at Louisville, I think it was immediately, okay, Jack Plummer's got one more year. He was a guy that you immediately thought of. Yes, he's going to be the guy. And I think this offense is going to be better. I think this offense is going to be more dynamic than it was last year. I think last year it was a lot centered around the running game, and they would do a lot of the same things and a lot of the same different variations. Now, they could pass it. They had a great receiver in Tyler Hudson. During the Satterfield era, Tutu Atwell, different guys that they had. But you're going to see more passing in this Jeff Brohm offense, and you're going to see more balls down the field, which I think a lot of the fans did not like in the Satterfield offenses. You didn't see as much down the field. Now, as far as the wide receivers are concerned, really, Amari Huggins-Bruce is the only guy back out of a pretty good group last year of receivers. And he was the one guy who was kind of inconsistent last year as a true sophomore. He played well as a freshman and a little bit better as a sophomore. If I had right now, I would say Jamari Thrash, the transfer from Jackson State, is the guy who's going to be the star in this offense for Jeff Brohm. Kevin Coleman, is another one. Jimmy Callaway from Tennessee has been moved from a slot to more of the outside. They really like what he has done. And then a couple of freshmen, William Foles and Katarius Hicks, are two guys that came in the spring and really had good springs for them. So they've got a lot of guys. And you know, you never know until fall camp gets here who's going to be on that roster. And I do think that they'll probably add another one right around the start of fall camp. And if they can get more playmakers, they will. But Jamari Thrash is that guy.
So 3 of the 5 offensive linemen from last year's team are gone. They do have 2 losses in Chandler and Trevor Reed, who are, if you're an ACC guy, you've seen those names on depth charts for a good long while. But they bring in 4 offensive line transfers. At least that's what I counted up. Who of those guys do we think are going to start?
It's actually 5, but
5.
But yes,
okay, wow.
yeah, but they had one. John Paul Flores is a guy who was here from Virginia in the spring, and they really liked him. He was running with the ones in the spring. They've got Brian Hudson, who is he's actually a Kentucky kid from up in Georgetown, Kentucky. Went to Virginia Tech, transferred back, and has started for 2 years. He's the centerpiece. He's the guy in the middle that will make things happen for them at center. You also have Renato Brown and Michael Gonzalez. Gonzalez is the one guy I think on the team when if you're just coming in and you watch film of last year, Michael Gonzalez is the one guy that you point out and say, okay, he's a Sunday guy. He is a next level guy. He'll play in the NFL someday. Michael Gonzalez, it's like 6'5", 305. So you got Brown and Gonzalez. Both those guys can move around a little bit. But when you throw in guys that they've brought in, Willie Tyler from Rutgers and Lance Robinson from Houston are multi-year starter guys that have started for multi-years at different places. Like I said, John Paul Flores from Virginia is kind of the Swiss utility knife. He can play 3 different spots on the line if you need be. And then Vincent Lumia from Duquesne is just a depth guy who they really, really thought, hey, this kid is going to come in and do kind of whatever we want. Now, with that said, the one who's the main guy is the Purdue transfer, Eric Miller, big tackle. I think he's going to come in, and I think he starts right away. He's played for Jeff Brohm, for Brian Brohm. Again, you get the vibe that he knows what he's doing when he arrives on campus this summer, when he gets to be in with all the guys. He and Jack Plummer know each other well, so I think he's going to be the 4th guy. And then, like I said, you've got Tyler and Robinson and Flores, guys that you can pick from there. And then they've got some young guys as well. 2 of their highest rated recruits out of this recruiting class are for Louisville this past year. Were freshman offensive linemen. And, when you really look at that, Madden Sanker, one of the highest rated recruits that they've ever had. And then Luke Burgess, a kid from Indianapolis. I think those guys, I don't think those guys are going to see a ton of reps, but I think there's the potential that one of them could kind of be in the mix.
So, I mean, I look at this offense, and offensive line should be kind of same or better. Receiver could be same or better. Quarterback, probably somewhat of a drop off because Cunningham was fairly good. Like, I can still see a better offense. Defensively, this was a very underrated defense, I thought, nationally, and especially down the stretch. It kind of hit its stride. I like what they have coming back as far as just dependability and knowing what you have on the interior defensive line. Jody, I got some major questions about pass rush here. I mean, Yaya Diaby, Yasir Abdullah, and Momo Sanogo, 40 tackles for loss and 23 sacks between those 3 guys. How big is the drop-off here?
Well, I think they've got a lot of bodies, but they've got a lot of guys who are unproven a little bit. Now, with that said, moving the system, from what they were doing to now having, the 4-2-5, I think helps because of the personnel that they have. They can move a guy. Their best defensive lineman returning is Ashton Gelati, no question. 6'3", 275-pound junior. He is a guy who's played more in the middle for Brian Brown, or more kind of in the trenches for Brian Brown. I can see where they will move him to one of those 4 outside spots, and he's going to probably maybe not be what Yasir Abdullah and Yaya Diaby were, but not too far off from that. Stephen Herron, a transfer from Stanford, who's a local kid from here in Louisville. He's going to have to come in and play. And then they did have some young guys that they were excited about, and that the previous staff was excited about. And then when this new staff got here, they were like, okay, these guys are actually pretty good. So that, to me, again, it's the biggest question mark on this team. What can they do up front defensively? But they have a lot of options. They have a lot of bodies, and I think with the addition of Heron and having Ashton Gillotti and moving him around a little bit, I think it gives them a good start. It's just going to have to be, they're going to have to build some depth. Now, with that said, Mark Ivy was the defensive line coach for them under Scott Satterfield. He's the only guy, full-time staffer, who was retained. He moves to the linebacker spot, which he had coached before. And then Mark Hagan, who's the co-defensive coordinator, is now doing the defensive line. So you've got a couple of guys there that know these guys well and can kind of get after them and get them going. I do think it's a group that again, we don't know, and that's the biggest question mark. But I think that they have a lot of potential in that group with some of the younger guys. I can tell you this: they have a lot of really good freshmen that are coming in. It's one of the highest rated recruiting classes in school history. And I think the guy that they're more excited about than anybody is Adonijah Green. They call him Sticks, and for rightly so. 6'6", 205-pound defensive end. Now, is he going to be able to do it this year at that weight? No, he's going to have to put some weight and some strength on. But if they can get one guy like that to kind of come through this year that they don't expect, and there's a few of them that they kind of think are going to be really good. If they can get one of those guys to come through, it's going to really help out. And again, it's just about depth up front.
So I have a couple questions too about the sort of off-ball inside linebacker type. So you lose Monty Montgomery and you lose Jones. And if you're a national fan, like maybe not know those guys are, but in the ACC, like we knew who those guys were. Right? Like those guys could play. What's the level of play you're expecting out of the linebacker unit?
Well, it got a big boost with the addition of Keith Brown from Oregon. He's a guy who's got experience, who's a veteran. They needed that. They felt in spring ball, they felt pretty good. KJ Cloyd is an older guy who's been around, who hasn't been a star, but has been solid and can do it. Jalen Alderman, and then Gilbert Frierson, who the kid who transferred from Miami. He played a little more of a safety kind of thing at Miami, but they've moved him into there. Jackson Hamilton's a younger kid that they have as well, and TJ Quinn. Now, those are guys that are coming back. They also had I was talking about Adonijah Green as the number one guy as far as the freshman. The next guy, and again, it's funny because Jeff Brohm, this offensive guy, they brought in a lot of offensive weapons and different things, and the two freshmen they're more excited about, I think, are the defensive guys. And Stanquan Clark is the other one. He's a linebacker from down in Miami, who I think is going to play. I think he's going to absolutely come in and be a really good player. I'm not going to say he's going to start from day one, but there's a chance he's out there on opening night for Louisville. He is really that good. And we saw it in the spring game, 6 tackles in the spring game, and was just all around the ball. So they've got pieces. It's just a little bit unproven, some young guys. And then you add Keith Brown to the mix, the kid from Oregon. And I think he is the one, he's the one transfer. They needed a bunch of pieces in the transfer. Obviously you needed a quarterback, you needed different things, but the one transfer after spring ball that perhaps they needed more than anything was somebody at that linebacker group with some experience, and they got him with Keith Brown.
So, Jody, they lose Catrell Clark, who I thought was a pretty underrated player. And I mean, granted, this defense was really good, I thought, especially down the stretch.
Right.
Everybody else who played a lot of snaps pretty much returned, and yet they went out and they brought in 6 transfers at DB. Like, what does that say about the staff's evaluation of the returners at DB?
Well, again, I think it's more about the depth than anything. I think it's more about the switch in the scheme and having more guys, out there. Obviously, Jarvis Brownlee's the best defensive back that they have. I thought as good as Keitrell Clark was last year, I thought late in the season, Jarvis Brownlee was playing at a higher level than anybody on that defense in the secondary. I thought he would leave. I thought he would at least maybe, test the waters or do something. But, he actually, from what I understand, people around him were like, hey, one more year of what you did last year, and you're going to see your stock go up even higher now with a new staff. You see a different version of Jarvis Brownlee. He's around the ball more. He had a great spring for what he was out there, and I think Jarvis Brownlee is the best guy there. Quincy Riley is a guy who the other staff was so high on. He played really well late in the season. MJ Griffin, hey, they didn't put him in until the Virginia game. He didn't play, and once he got in, they couldn't get him out of the lineup at safety last year. So he is obviously a playmaker as well. And then you have kind of the forgotten guy to me is Josh Minkins, 6'3", 195-pound safety. He didn't, because he got hurt late in the season. He missed the bowl game, and he missed all of spring ball. So we've kind of forgotten about him a little bit. But that's four, like you said, four returning guys right there. Other than that, they've got some younger guys that are unproven, and I just think the staff felt like they needed to go out and get some guys. Marcus Washington being the one, I think, who's probably the one that I'm more intrigued about anything. Cam Kelly and Storm Duck from UNC. I know they both went elsewhere, but they're transferring from UNC because they were only at those other places for like 2 months. But both of those guys, we kind of know what you're going to get. You've seen what you're going to get. But I think Marcus Washington, the transfer from Georgia, is the one that I'm maybe more excited about than anything because of the potential that everybody saw in him coming out of high school. And I think he can come in and really help this defense this year. And again, it's more about depth. Ron English and Steve Ellis, the two coaches back there in the back end, they want to use a lot of guys. They want to rotate guys in and out of there and keep guys fresh and keep guys out there. And to do that, they needed more bodies. And I think they've gone out and they've done that.
Jody, where on this team would you say is the spot that the starters are a lot better than the backups, and so they have to really stay healthy here?
I mean, honestly, I think it's right now quarterback. I mean, I really do. Brock Doman, for all that he did last year, that's the crazy thing to go back to last year. If you think about it, Malik Cunningham had such a great career, but really for the expectation of last year, he didn't have a great senior last season here at Louisville. Yeah. He didn't finish some games because he was injured throughout, and that's not a fault to his own because he was making plays and doing different things, and then he didn't play, in the bowl game. Brock Doman came in and did an admirable job. He tried to do what best he could do, and he really did do a good job to lead this team, and then they won the bowl game. But for Jeff Brohm and for Brian Brohm and for this staff, I think you look at that quarterback position being so important to what they do and how they do it. Jack Plummer is that guy, but I think there is a pretty big drop off, in my opinion, once you get past Jack Plummer to go, to the other guys. With that said, Pierce Clarkson is the kind of the oddball kind of in the equation here, because I thought Pierce Clarkson would be the backup, but he hurt his foot in the before spring ball and missed almost all of spring ball. Didn't take hardly any live reps. I don't think he took any live reps. He took some reps, but he missed all of spring ball, and that put him behind. So he was set up to be the backup and to kind of close that gap. And hey, I thought maybe when Jeff Brohm was a freshman at Louisville way back in the day, Howard Schnellenberger made it to where Jeff Brohm came in. He was the prized freshman. He was the guy in the recruiting class. And Jeff Brohm had at least one series in every second quarter when Browning Nagel was the quarterback at Louisville. I kind of thought, you know what, Jeff Brohm kind of might do the same thing or something similar, at least to see with Pierce Clarkson out there. Unfortunately, Pierce Clarkson gets injured, doesn't go through spring ball, and now is kind of in the middle of a group with all those other guys. I do think he will step forward and be the backup and narrow the gap in fall camp. So I don't think there will be that big a gap. But right now, if I had to say, that is the biggest gap.
Awesome. Jody, Cardinal Authority, really appreciate the time.
Thanks. Appreciate it.